good evening from Phoenix, Arizona. We're outside the headquarters of Turning Point USA, the organization that Charlie Kirk founded from just an idea when he was barely out of high school, an idea he had in high school, and turned it into the most powerful political organization perhaps the United States has ever seen. On Sunday, both the president and the vice president will fly across the country to eulogize their good friend. And we looked back. The only time in history we can find a president and vice president speaking at a funeral together was for former presidents. So Charlie Kirk will be the first non-president that the president and vice president have come to speak at his memorial service. That sets the stage for what is the beginning of cementing Charlie Kirk's legacy in American politics. Coming up, Jack Sobek on this moment in our country's history, Mike Nellis on what Democrats can do, if they can do anything to regain momentum, Isabel Brown on the role of women, including Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica, who is now taking over Turning Point USA. But first, we are living in unprecedented times. The right says this is an awakening, and they can finally tear down the liberal stranglehold on American institutions. We've seen so many things happen just in the past 10 days. And yes, the political right in America is wielding power unlike they ever have before. Although we showed you last night, it's not really any different than how Democrats have wielded power in the past. But Kirk's death, and this is what we have seen over the past week, accelerated something he fought for so hard in life. He fought for Republicans to fight and fight hard. That's why he was killed. He was killed because he was so effective. And we really don't know yet what Kirk's death means. You never understand the historical effect of a moment when you're in it. You know it's a moment. The left says this moment means we are dangerously heading towards fascism. Their words, not mine. And things are different. The institutions that Democrats perpetually owned, and I say that proverbially that they own, that they control, that we're loyal to them, the media, universities, major corporations, they are all bending. So Democrats feel very threatened. That is true. The only side right now that both sides agree on, there's one thing they agree on, that this moment is an inflection point. And perhaps the pun is appropriate. We are at a turning point in American politics, so both sides are right about that. In life, no one fully understood the power of Charlie Kirk. I certainly didn't. But his death has changed American politics rapidly. They were changing slowly, now it's happened rapidly. It fully exposed the American political divide. You don't now have to study politics to understand the bare-knuckle brawling of the culture war, and it's no longer taboo for the culture war to be a full-contact sport. And the way Democrats are handling this situation makes it very hard to take their warnings about Trump seriously, especially the celebrations that Democrats have had over Charlie Kirk's death and the demonizing of him. Speaking of which, today, the House of Representatives voted on a resolution to honor Kirk and condemn his killing. That's it. Democrats voted against it. They didn't abstain, they didn't skip the vote, they actually voted against it. And they didn't just vote against it, they railed against it and against Charlie Kirk. Here's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
We should be clear about who Charlie Kirk was. A man who believed that the Civil Rights Act that granted Black Americans the right to vote was a mistake. His rhetoric and beliefs were ignorant, uneducated, and sought to disenfranchise millions of Americans.
For those who want to both sides it, which has been happening over the past 10 days, we can. Because the entire Republican conference in the House of Representatives voted to pass a resolution condemning the assassination of Melissa Hortman. She was the former Democratic Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives. She was murdered in her home. That's who Democrats always say, well, there's violence on the left from the right. Well, every single Republican voted to condemn that killing. Now, we all know the current occupant of the White House has spent the past couple of days calling his political opponents, in his words, scum. And those that want to occupy the White House, that being Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, took to the House floor to demonize a man who was assassinated and who has not yet been buried. So here is the irony of all of this. The person Republicans will come to honor on Sunday never engaged in that. I covered Charlie Kirk for about a decade now. And I never heard him call anyone or any group a derogatory name. He spent his time debating the other side. That's it. And he did it very well. And that's what he was doing when he got killed. We begin tonight with Jack Sobick, Turning Point USA contributor, host of Human Events Daily. Tyler Boyer, Turning Point Action's Chief Operating Officer. Gentlemen, good to see you. To say this has been an awful, awful week for you would be an understatement, so we appreciate you being here. I won't ask you how you're doing because I already know the question. We can see it in your face. Tyler, you're now organizing the funeral for one of your dear friends. Among those speaking, the president, the vice president, the secretary of state, the list goes on and on. Did you understand during Charlie's life, did you know 2 weeks ago the kind of influence and effect he had, Turning Point USA had in American politics?
Yeah, I mean, we felt the influence for sure. I mean, everything that we've worked for and built, you said it best, that this is one of the largest political operations that the country's ever seen, certainly in modern American history. And so we felt that, and we knew what we were working towards and what kind of influence that Charlie Kirk had internally within the conservative movement. I think what's been a surprise is the externality of everything. How many foreign countries have paid respects to Charlie? That's been a surprise, I think, for all of us. How this is impacting a lot of Democrats. I mean, we've received significant return from many Democrats saying, hey, I'm switching parties or I'm switching to independent. I don't like what I'm seeing. And that, again, that speaks to Charlie. And as you said, he was a man who never went after people in a derogatory way.
No, and I remember, you know, that's what this show is tough interviews. Not tonight, but it normally is. And he was always willing to have a respectful conversation. And I think, and I hate to say this in this way, but he was so smart he didn't have to call anybody names or argue. He could actually argue the facts with you and put you in a corner. Jack, you think about moments in American history, and you were intelligence officer in the military, and you think about moments of inflection. There is a George Floyd-like moment to what we're seeing here, that all of a sudden we didn't know anything was there, and then all of a sudden something happens in the country, something violent, and the whole country seems to change. Now, there have been no riots. That's a significant difference. There have been prayer groups in this case. Do we yet know what the assassination of Charlie Kirk means in the larger American political conversation?
I don't think we know yet, Leland. And, you know, when you look at one of these things, it's tempting to want to try to make pronouncements and predictions as to what's going to come next. But, you know, I don't think that anyone would have predicted, by the way, that, you know, 5 years or 4 years after George Floyd, that Donald Trump would be getting reelected as president. Or
4 years after January 6th.
Or all of the things that have gone on. And so, you know, it's tough to make those prognostications. But I would say I have a hope. And I would say my hope is that as horrific as this violence was and this just unspeakable evil, that just look behind us, right? This incredible vigil where people come together, it's peaceful, it's prayerful. Every church in this country, and just here as well as Phoenix, but even back home, back east, people were saying the pews are packed like it was Easter Sunday. And I hope that, if anything, as Charlie would have wanted, that there's a positive response that comes out, people opening Bibles again, going to church again, even if they don't know what to do, you know, you just go. And that it's a positive turn in our country towards an understanding of humanity.
It's interesting you say that, because I think there's a lot of Republicans now who feel a power that they didn't feel before, especially with what's happened with Jimmy Kimmel, especially how we've seen real change sort of in America in the past 10 days. But this from an AP poll, GOP thinks U.S. is heading in right direction. September 10th, it was 49%. So that's after the assassination. June 4th, it was 70%.
Wow. I haven't seen that.
How do we explain that?
Be interested what time of day that was taken, by the way, because obviously September 10th was the day Charlie was shot. So, you know, you could assuming that it's taken that into account, I think it's something where, look, Republicans had a huge victory. President Trump wins, House, Senate, all the swing states. Outside of Trump himself, the only person that you could say who had the biggest influence on that was Charlie Kirk. And the work that he and Tyler with Turning Point Action did across the country. And so, on the heels of such a big victory, you're expecting and you're seeing, lots of wins, things that conservatives have been fighting for so long. And then suddenly to have one of your leading voices, literal leading voice for youth and for so many people around the country, just so suddenly and viciously ripped out, it does feel kind of like the bottom just falls out.
Look, I said on air, I think on September 10th, I said there is no person in America more politically powerful than Charlie Kirk other than Donald Trump.
Right.
Was by far the most influential non-political leader we've seen in modern politics in the past 30, 40 years. Way more impactful than a Jerry Falwell or anybody like that. Tyler, what does this intersection that we've seen now about faith? Because I think so many people understood that Turning Point USA was about organizing the college campuses and organizing Republicans and in the youth in America. Did everyone understand how important the faith part of this was?
Yeah, I think what people are realizing now is the undertone that Charlie Kirk produced was actually really the overtone. It was the leading factor. We talk all the time about the Charlie thought process, which is that politics is downstream from culture.
Andrew Breitbart.
Andrew Breitbart. He was a student of Andrew Breitbart. Yep. He loved Andrew Breitbart, and so it helped motivate him to get into politics.
Okay.
We talked about it all the time, but that's why he led so strongly with his faith.
Well, and we said it the other day. It's like, so Breitbart was politics is downstream from culture. If you add Charlie's piece, it's that culture is downstream from faith.
Okay. Excellent analysis. The part of this change, and we've seen this happen before in American politics, is this sort of this snap effect. And one of the snap effects has been, whatever you want to call it, the suspension, the firing, the canceling of Jimmy Kimmel. And that has created I don't want to say schism, but it's certainly created a split within the Republican Party. This was Ted Cruz talking about his view of what was happening. Take a listen.
What he said there is dangerous as hell. That's right out of a mafioso. It might feel good right now to threaten Jimmy Kimmel, but when it is used to silence every conservative in America, we will regret it.
Jack, is there a concern or a thought that Republicans are angry, understandably, hurt, understandably, and maybe doing things in that vein that later will turn out to be regretful?
Well, look, I think in this situation, I've also seen in the Wall Street Journal and Hollywood Reporter, they've been talking about how there really was this backlash from the local affiliates. So I think there's a lot going on here. And at the same time, I totally get what people are saying. Look, if you're going to wield power and do so in a correct manner, you need to do so with that understanding of what the after effects are going to be. You have to understand when it's the right call, when it's the wrong call, what follow-on effects are going to have. But at the same time, just in this example, I hear this a lot of time from conservatives who say, well, what if the left were to cancel, conservatives? What if the left were to do that? And they've been doing that for a decade.
Right.
They've been doing it for a decade.
But the argument is it was wrong then. And it was something that Charlie spoke out against in this sense.
Yeah, but there's a massive difference here, which is that there's an expectation that those that are sitting within positions of authority, both in private corporations and then also that are called and assigned to governmental positions, also are caretakers of those specific entities. And so, for us, the left was attacking the individual. The left was trying to take out people like Charlie Kirk, was trying to sideline Charlie Kirk.
Demonize him by name.
Demonize him by name. Charlie, as you pointed out, never demonized anyone.
Agreed.
And you still have these people doing it. I mean, even after the fact, the whole purpose that Jimmy Kimmel was trying to evoke on his show was to continue to demonize conservatives who have just been murdered. And so
to blame conservatives for murdering their own.
Blame conservatives, but also put a target on conservatives and continue that narrative. To do what? But to actually sideline those people from conversations, to set them aside. So I think it's really important for people to stand up and say, no, that's wrong. Many Democrats did that, and many people that hold positions of authority that are not our friends were the ones that spoke up.
Barack Obama, arguably the leader of the Democrat Party, and he brings up Charlie's name the other day, and he's talking about my friend who just got killed, and the very next breath he's criticizing him and demonizing and adding on this. It's like, why do you have to do that?
I think it's well. We're gonna get into that with the next segment, because we have a Democrat coming up to ask that question too. It's good to see you, fellas.
Thank you.
It's rare that you have to say this on TV individually to people who you know, but I know your guys' heart is hurting for a friend, and what you guys have done over the past week, 10 days, to honor him and continue his legacy and fight in the way he did has been extraordinarily impressive. So,
thank you for that.
Yeah,
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thanks for having us on.
Godspeed.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
In the week after Charlie Kirk's murder, Republicans have never been stronger. Leading Democrats are still calling Republicans fascist. Fact check, true. Next, what do Democrats have to do to get back in the game?
This is an assault on everything this country has stood for since the Constitution's been signed.
We are in our dark and dangerous time in America.
It's chilling, and it's scary.
That's censorship. That's state speech control. That's not America.
Completely and totally unacceptable and un-American.
State-sponsored censorship. Full stop. That's what this is.
Super dangerous. What the president's doing is really, really dangerous.
It's hard to understand how unity or a lower temperature comes from either side right now, but Democrats are doubling down on calling Trump and Republicans, in their word, fascist. Their words, not mine. With us now, Mike Nellis, former senior advisor to Kamala Harris, author of the Substack Endless Urgency, now up to 1.2 million subscribers, including me. He will smile when he hears me say that. He's out with a new piece today and says he's going to keep calling Trump a fascist. You and I disagree on that point. That's been well established in our conversation. So I'll ask a different question. Democrats have been calling Trump fascist since 2015. That was what the 2024 election was about. That was one of Kamala Harris's main points. I don't have to remind you, you Democrats lost the 2024 election. Have you considered the possibility, since you want to win elections, that the American people don't buy it and it's counterproductive?
I think the American people now have 9 months more evidence showing that Kamala Harris was right. And this is the point that I made in the piece today, is I'm very sorry for what happened to Charlie Kirk. I'm very sad about it. I view it as an attack on the nation, but I don't view it as something that should change the Democratic Party's posture. Just look at what Trump has done in the last 2 weeks. We're 2 weeks removed from him posting an AI-generated image of my city, the city of Chicago, on fire because he napalmed it at the same time he's promising to invade it. He's using the FCC to threaten to have Jimmy Kimmel and other comedians he doesn't like removed. That is fascism. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, you should call it what it is. And then we should get back to focusing on what he's doing that's hurting this country.
I guess that may be my question in terms of where the focus is, whether the focus should be on what Donald Trump is doing or what Democrats will do. This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I think it's worth replaying her after the vote on a resolution to condemn the assassination of Charlie Kirk, her talking about Charlie Kirk.
The majority proceeded with a resolution that brings great pain to the millions of Americans who endured segregation, Jim Crow, and the legacy of bigotry today. We should be clear about who Charlie Kirk was. His rhetoric and beliefs were ignorant, uneducated, and sought to disenfranchise millions of Americans.
I'm just asking you from a strategy standpoint. I think you're one of the smartest minds politically on the left right now. That's why I read your stuff every day. How do you win elections that are won on the margins in the middle by insulting the other side's martyr, for lack of a better term?
Well, look, I don't think it's insulting to remind people what Charlie Kirk has said. And I've been on your program quite a lot in the last week since this happened. I've tried to lead with respect and then watch as Republicans have repeatedly blamed people like me for what happened to Charlie Kirk when I don't share any ideology with the shooter. We still really don't know why he did what he did. And we'll get to the bottom of that when there's a trial, which will be sooner than later, I hope. But Ocasio-Cortez is talking about the fact that Charlie Kirk said that the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. He was actively opposed to something that dramatically changed.
But is now the right time?
I mean, look, Republicans are lionizing Charlie Kirk. You said at the beginning that he led the most powerful organization in the history of America. I wrote it down because I think that's a little bit hyperbolic. I think it's fine to memorialize someone who is gone, to feel the way that you're feeling. I'm also mourning this because I think it's an attack on all Americans. But I think Republicans have taken it a step too far where they're trying to whitewash what Charlie Kirk stood for.
Okay. Look, history, and Republicans say this, right? In death, history is flattened. I think that's a fair critique. You started off by talking about how Republicans are now trying to censor and bully and use government power to silence their critics, which I agree is a bad thing in America. And I understand Democrats calling it out. What I don't understand, though, is why Democrats would be against something they did themselves. Kamala Harris, let's be honest, at Real Donald Trump's Twitter account should be suspended. She said that in September of 2019 when she herself wanted to be president. And then we put together this of those on the left challenging and saying we should use government power, and they wanted to silence those on the right. Take a listen.
You shouldn't be banned from one platform and not others for providing misinformation.
But reducing a liar's reach is not the same as censoring freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is different than freedom of reach.
There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
This is a matter of corporate responsibility. Twitter should be held accountable and shut down that site.
I believe that when it comes to broadcast television, like Fox News, these are subject to federal law, federal regulation in terms of what's allowed on air and what isn't.
Never mind that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez might need a lesson in the difference between broadcast and cable. But why was it okay when Democrats were trying to use government power to censor speech? It's not okay when Republicans do.
Well, Democrats haven't used it. And look, I'm the first Democrat to tell you I think cancel culture went way too far over the last 4 years. But now I think we're going in the opposite direction. We're finding that a lot of conservatives believe in cancel culture. They just want to be able to use it themselves. That's what they want, which is why they're celebrating it. What Trump did here is he used the power of the FCC to threaten the removal of ABC's license to get Jimmy Kimmel, a comedian that he's taken that he doesn't like, off the air. And here's what really bothers me about it, probably more than anything else. You showed a poll to the two gentlemen you had on before, that 40%, that went from 70% of Republicans say we're on the right track, 40% say we're on the wrong track now. And you frame that in the context of the Kirk shooting. Thank you for pulling that up. I appreciate it, 49%. But there is a massive decrease in the way people, particularly under 40, are feeling right now. And that has to do with the economy. It has to do with the inflation. It has to do with the tone and tenor of the direction of the country. And Donald Trump is using the power of the government to go after comedians he doesn't like and not doing anything about inflation, grocery prices, housing, giving people an opportunity to succeed in this economy. That's what bothers me more than anything.
And I am going to blow past the allotted time for this interview and irritate the entire producing team in the control room, because I want to ask you a follow-up question to that. Sure. Then why aren't Democrats talking about that over and over and over again? Why are they spending so much time defending what was a low-rated comedian and complaining about what Donald Trump is doing? Why not talk about the economy and what Democrats are going to do about the economy if you actually believe what you just said?
I think we should be talking about both, because I do believe it is an attack on free speech. I do believe that Donald Trump wants to pull the levers of government to make the country more in his image. He's abusing his power. And at the same time, we need to be talking about what we're going to do to make the economy work for everybody, because people are getting hurt right now. They're getting taken advantage of by a class of people who are making more and more money while people are struggling to buy a house or put food on the table. So you got to do both, because there are fundamental basic freedoms, and one of those freedoms is your ability to succeed in the economy.
Well, when I come on your show, we're going to have a conversation about that, because I agree with you that when fundamental fairness is lost in America, and when people feel the economy is unfair, it's a dangerous time. It's good to see you, Mike, as always.
Great. Thank you, Leland. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you. If you listen to the left-wing media, as you just heard, you would think President Trump were getting rid of all comedy shows and attacking the First Amendment. There's Tim Walz. He says we become North Korea overnight.
It's one of the most outrageous affronts on this. This is North Korea-style stuff, and it's being done because this is a weak, thin-skinned man who's failing as a president. All of the things he promised are not happening, and this is exactly what dictators do.
So almost as he was saying that, because he was on another cable news show, he won't come on this one, we checked and thought perhaps that all of the late-night shows would be canceled last night, that there would be no more comedy. And then we turned on the television and saw this last night.
Nation folk, America is facing perhaps its greatest crisis in 249 years. You see, people are saying things that hurt Donald Trump's feelings.
But I'm going to cover the president's trip to the UK just like I normally would. Here we go. Well, guys, President Trump just wrapped up his 3-day trip to the UK, and he
looked incredibly handsome.
We have another fun, hilarious, administration-compliant show.
And I have not seen a single call by Republicans to get them taken off the air for any of that. Not one. And that's the point. This weekend, when people tell you suspending Jimmy Kimmel is about free speech, no, it's not. It's about whether you can victim blame half the country and keep your job. We first wrote about all this in War Notes, your chance for an inside look at the show every day. warnotes.com to subscribe. I'll see you on social media at Leland Vittert. President Trump thanks Charlie Kirk for helping him with the youth vote. He credits him with winning the election. How will the roots he planted with this movement grow and prosper under his widow, Erica's leadership?
Charlie always said that when he was gone, he wanted to be remembered for his courage and for his faith. But our God, you guys, our God is so good. He's so incredibly good. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good.
All right, Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, will be one of the featured speakers at Sunday's service. That was her speaking last Friday. Her faith will once again be a large part of it, because Charlie wasn't one to shy away from his faith. It was his North Star in his political conversations. With us now, Lucas Miles, Senior Director of Turning Point USA, faith-led pastor of Influence Church, author of Pagan Threat. Isabel Brown, host of the Isabel Brown Show on the Daily Wire, and a former Turning Point USA contributor. Welcome to you both. Sorry it's under these circumstances, but that's sort of been the past 10 days. Isabel, there's two components of this segment. One, it was how Charlie Kirk used faith and what the faith component of Turning Point USA. But the other, I think, that has surprised so many people is how he appealed to young men makes sense, right? And all of a sudden he told young men, you matter, you're not toxic, go be young men and provide for your families, and on and on and on. But how did that then appeal to young women?
Yeah, you know, I think we're still seeing that unfold in real time, Leland. And in terms of the faith component of all of this, listen to what's happening right behind us, an organic moment of worship and praise, singing thanks be to God for this incredible young man and the legacy that he's leaving for our country. But I think Charlie provided a new blueprint for a new generation of what masculinity looks like. Throughout my lifetime, men have been attacked from every direction, from every pillar of American culture, told that they have to run away from the inherent qualities of masculinity. But Charlie told them to tap into that. He was just getting started doing that for young women, but as Tyler Boyer tweeted just a few days ago, Charlie Kirk may have led the revolution for young men, but Erica Kirk is going to pick up that mantle and awaken an entire generation of young women.
There's that question, though, Lucas, and we'll get to the faith part in a second, though. I have said over and over that Charlie Kirk is the most influential non-politician of the modern era. There's no one who's had that kind of influence who wasn't either a president or a presidential candidate, period. Can you replace him with one person, or do you have to replace him in aggregate?
Look, I think that God has people like Charlie Kirk in every generation. Charlie was ours, and he has left just an indelible mark on this movement, on this generation. And I think you're right. I think that men, responded so well to that. But I am optimistic, for women today. I think that, when you look at some of the role models that have been out there for women, it's Lady Gaga and Nicki Minaj and Taylor Swift, and these figures that lean left, these figures that talk about occult and tarot cards and all these sorts of things. And Charlie stood opposed to that. And now we have people like Erica who's standing up. And I think that the nation responded to her this last week as a widow when she stood up with complete resolve and said, this mission is not stopping.
It was one of the more phenomenally impressive moments in terms of someone rising to the occasion that I'd ever seen. I watched it and then reported on it in real time. Something that we've seen that is different about Charlie Kirk as it relates to faith is we've seen political faith leaders, thinking Billy Graham, thinking Jerry Falwell, on, who had enormous influence within their own faith, right? Somehow, Charlie Kirk was able to transcend faith, right? An evangelical Christian who appealed to Catholics, who appealed to Jews, and sort of this whole faith community. Here's Cardinal Dolan talking about Charlie Kirk and his influence.
This guy's a modern-day St. Paul. He was a missionary. He's an evangelist. He's a hero. He's one, I think, that knew what Jesus meant when he said, the truth will set you free. And to do it, now, I understand he was pretty blunt and he was pretty direct. He didn't try to avoid any controversy. He didn't even try to avoid confrontation. The difference is the way, the mode, the style that he did it.
Okay. Faith is not something that's a big part of my life. I'm fully transparent about that on the show. I'm still confounded by the idea, though, that someone who was so evangelical in their own way could also be so appealing to Catholics, Jews, and across the evangelical Christian community. Why?
Just a few days ago, I had an incredible honor and privilege of sharing the stage with Charlie at one of his last speaking engagements on this earth. And we were speaking at a big, beautiful church community in Fresno, California, to a multi-denominational audience. And to listen to Charlie captivate this room of about 3,000 people from every denomination of Christianity, you could hear a pin drop. And I joked backstage with one of the organizers, in another life, I'm certain Charlie Kirk was a pastor. And she said, I think someday he might still be. He had this unique ability to connect with people's hunger for something bigger than themselves. And I think what we're seeing in the wake of his death even speaks more highly than his ability to connect with multiple denominations. I have 5,000 to 10,000 DMs from young people under the age of 35 saying, I prayed for the first time this week. I bought my first Bible. I went to church for the first time on Sunday. How can I continue this for Charlie? For our older viewers, DMs are direct messages you send on social media. We have to clear that up. Hey, this was a great conversation. Thank you all. Thank you.
Tough weekend. We'll be thinking about you.
Thank you.
All right. Charlie Kirk's producer says Charlie would want Comedy Central to re-air the South Park episode lampooning him. In fact, Charlie Kirk put it on his social media. Does anything else show why Charlie was so loved by America's youth than that?
One of the reasons why President Trump won the White House is younger voters put him in the White House. President Donald Trump was unafraid to go on social media, and he dominated on TikTok. He was unafraid to go on podcasts. And the younger generation, one of the main reasons they supported President Trump, they want to be able to own homes, they want to have kids, they want to get married, they want their slice of the American dream.
All right. One of Charlie Kirk's more masterful abilities was turning young Americans into Republican voters. I remember when he was telling me in 2015, 2016 that he had this vision. Nobody thought it was possible, but somehow he did it. And he did it by understanding the fears and anxieties of Gen Z. They were, literally. Three people who know that very well: Stephen Davis, co-host of Turning Point USA's Campus Crashers series; Grace Riley, former Turning Point USA ambassador and analyst for Restoration of America; and C.J. Pearson, co-chair of the GOP Youth Advisory Council. Good to see all of you. Grace, ladies first. What did Charlie understand about America's college kids that everybody else missed? Because you were one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I was one of them. He inspired countless millions, and he continues to do that. And we're seeing that in the chapter numbers that are being reported right now, where it's triple what his dream was back, unfortunately, when he was alive. But he inspired so many millions of college students. I was one of them. I was actually a high schooler when I met Charlie Kirk, and he changed my life. I mean, he encouraged me to stand firmly for Christian conservative values, and he's done that for so many people. It's an absolutely incredible legacy that we continue to see because he understands what Gen Z is facing, and with identifying that, he's just opened so many young people's eyes.
Stephen, what was the secret sauce?
You know, just going out there and preaching the gospel and preaching the truth. At the end of the day, truth shall set us free. That's something that he understood. That's something that we all know as very well for ourselves.
So many other Republicans have tried to preach the truth and said the very same thing, CJ, and it didn't really ever resonate until Kirk said it.
Well, I think Charlie met people where they are. He didn't just go out on college campuses to preach. He went to college campuses to listen and to invite debate. He was evangelical with his approach to conservative ideology, which I think is something that we ought to learn. We cannot just preach to the choir if we're going to win in this country. We have to go and grow the congregation, and that's what Charlie Kirk worked to do every single day.
Does it concern anybody from the sense of what we were founded as, in the idea of a separation of church and state, of the sort of complete intertwining of faith and politics, Christian faith and politics that exist here?
You know, our country was founded as a Christian nation, and it was founded by Christians. And in our founding documents, it does not say that the church has to stay out of the government. It says that the government has to stay out of the church. So that being said, with our founding values being so rooted in our faith, in our very laws, it makes sense that we would draw morality and all policy from that, at least considering it.
Right. Rights come from God, not from government, right? Stephen, give us a sense, as you're now talking to kids out on college campuses and hearing from them now in the wake of Charlie's assassination, where does the movement go from here?
Oh, we have been totally reinvigorated. We are going out there full force. We are going to save this nation. Gen Z, Gen Alpha are going out there strong, and that's what it's all about.
Who's Gen Alpha?
Gen Alpha, oh, the younger of the youngers. I must say, they are the ones that are going out there. And, you know, by all means, we need to continue on with this message of Charlie Kirk that, you know, promoting patriotism.
There was something about Charlie also. He took what he did really seriously. He didn't take himself seriously. I thought the fact that he loved the South Park episode about himself. South Park is this cartoon character who is horribly unpolitically correct, and they completely razz anybody. No one is spared. And Charlie really embraced it. Take a listen. No, we don't have it. But he did. And now, in the wake of his death, they took the episode off the air. And CJ, and now I'm thinking about it, and it was Turning Point USA said, no, put it back up, this episode mocking Charlie Kirk. Why?
Exactly, because we don't have the sensitivities of the left. We can take, people poking fun at us. We can take people, laughing at us in jest. And I think Charlie did that in every which way. And it also showed just how much conservatives are beginning to win the culture war. The fact that we're on South Park, the fact that you have all of these huge cultural figures coming out and endorsing folks like President Trump, rappers, Kodak Black, Soulja Boy, so many more.
I don't know who any of those people are.
Well, your kids probably do.
I don't have kids, but okay.
your nephews and your nieces do. But what I will say, though, that is a show of the turning point, truly, that our nation is currently in right now. It is finally cool to be conservative again in this country, and it never really was before, and I think Charlie played a huge role in that.
Do you worry at all? Look, the pendulum swings, okay? We know that. In 2020, it was not cool to be conservative as a kid, and there were all these kids marching for George Floyd, and on and on and on. Now this pendulum swings back. Now it's cool to be conservative. What do you do to keep the pendulum from swinging back?
I mean, ultimately, for me, I'm more of a bull in a china shop. I'm all about the truth.
That surprises us, looking at it.
No idea what you're talking about. But yeah, I think that's what we need to do, is continue to promote the idea of truth, that you need to be beholden to truth. Sure, you can be, into all the different, cultural elements and all that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you have to be ensconced in truth. That's the only thing that's going to keep you, especially within the Word of God and in this country, surviving and thriving.
All right, Grace, CJ, Stephen, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Good seeing you all. Sunday service at Cardinal Stadium in Glendale, Arizona will be unlike anything we have seen in America. A funeral inside a football stadium will be there. A little bit more on what's going to happen Sunday morning when we come back. Sunday here in Phoenix, President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and much of the Trump administration will gather at State Farm Stadium, Glendale, Arizona, to honor Charlie Kirk and pay their respects. I'll be anchoring NewsNation special coverage from inside the State Farm Stadium. Coverage begins Sunday at 1 Eastern, 12 Central. A truly unprecedented event. With that, we tell you good night from Phoenix. I'll see you on Sunday.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.